Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, Healthy Holidays, Keeping Spirits Up During the Holidays with Fun and Nutritious Food. This webinar is sponsored by General Mills Convenience and Food Service, providing the food people love away from home. We are proud to offer the quality products that food service professionals rely on for consistent results in their own operations, as well as the beloved brands that their consumers know and trust. Also supporting today's webinar is General Mills Bell Institute of Health and Nutrition. If you're not familiar with the Bell Institute, they are a dedicated group within General Mills whose mission is to be the source of scientific health and nutrition expertise that creates value and growth for General Mills. My name is Megan Kilpa. I am the Healthcare Channel Manager with General Mills, and I will be your host for the webinar today. Now, before we begin today's program, I'd like to cover a few housekeeping matters. So first, this webinar is being recorded, and the recorded webinar, along with the presentation slides, will be available within a few weeks on generalmillscf.com. At the end of today's webinar, we will have a question and answer period. However, you can submit questions at any time during the webinar by using the chat feature on the lower left-hand corner of your screen. After the webinar concludes, you will be asked to fill out a short survey and will receive an email with a link to the slides, continuing education credit certificate, and an exclusive product offer within a week. And finally, we will be playing several videos throughout today's webinar. The audio for these videos will come through your computer speakers. If you happen to be listening through a phone line, you will not be able to hear the videos during the webinar, but you can access the recorded version of the webinar later to hear the audio. And with that, it is my pleasure to introduce our speakers. So our first speaker is Margaret Roche. Margaret is a nutrition and dining consultant who has been bringing innovation to healthcare dining for over 30 years. She is a registered dietitian with a master's in clinical nutrition. She is board certified in gerontological nutrition, a specialist in diabetes, and a fellow of the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics. In the 30 years since she's founded Roche Dietitians, her mission has been to educate and empower those who nourish older adults. During today's webinar, Maggie will be walking us through several ideas for using food to keep the holidays fun and healthy. Our second speaker is Chef Sonia Kerr. Chef Sonia is a corporate chef at General Mills supporting our healthcare channel and customers. At General Mills Food Service, Chef Sonia puts her extensive background in healthcare food service, catering, and college and university food service to task. Since joining the company in 2006, she has offered support, training, and culinary solutions to food service operators. She keenly recognizes the important role that food plays in patient satisfaction and a guest total experience. Chef Sonia draws on her expertise in training and development, healthcare solutions, and recipe development to support General Mills' food service customers. And during today's webinar, you'll see Chef Sonia in action in the kitchen demonstrating some holiday videos. And with that, I will turn it over to Maggie.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks, Megan. I'm thrilled to be part of this timely webinar. And thanks to all of you who've logged in. I appreciate you sharing part of your day with us. So I'm going to go ahead and get started right away with we have a poll to get us all started, and I'm going to get it, I think it's going for you. On a scale of 1 to 5, how concerned are you about the nutritional status of your residents since COVID-19? I'm going to give you a few seconds to fill that in. We're getting some great response here. The numbers are still going up. I'm going to wait until the numbers slow down a little bit in terms of the participants. We do have a few polls for you today. This is the first of 3. All right, I think I am going to close the poll, and let's see our results. And just as we suspected, right, on a scale of 1 to 5, how concerned are you about nutritional status of your residents since COVID-19? 39.2% extremely, 42.6% very. So, boy, that puts us almost at 80%. Well, at 80%, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, yeah, 80% are either very or extremely concerned. And of course, that is what we were all thinking as well. So let's move over. I think that really sets the tone for our conversation today. And I'll tell you more about what we're going to talk about. First, Our first objective is to understand how holiday foods are an opportunity for high-impact nutrition and socialization, especially now in the COVID era. 2, you learn how gut health affects immunity and overall wellness, and get examples of holiday recipes that are festive and do promote gut health. 3, gain specific strategies for high-calorie, high-protein holiday foods that support efforts to reduce unintentional weight loss. 4, identify ways to keep the holidays festive while improving the quality and safety of foods for those with chewing and swallowing problems. And 5, learn how to make between meal snacks an opportunity for holiday fun while still offering nutrition targeted to the older adults. But before we get into all of that, I do want to make sure that we're all on the same page when it comes to nutrition in the older adults. And so I'm sharing with you this infographic that highlights the status of nutrition and the older adults, specifically malnutrition. This infographic was created by the nutrition advocacy group Defeat Malnutrition Today, and Roche Dietitians is a member of this organization. They put this infographic together to spread the word on the prevalence and impact that malnutrition has on the older adults. And those of us who work with elders every day know a lot of this, and it's very exciting to see that it's increasingly becoming part of the conversation when it comes to public health policy. And so I just want to take a few seconds to break this down and let you get a good look at it. So these are the current statistics that Defeat Malnutrition Today put together. And many of us could have written this infographic based on our own instinct and experience, but it's sure nice to see all of this shored up in data. So for example, up to half of older adults are at risk for malnutrition. $51.3 billion is the estimated annual cost of disease-associated malnutrition in older adults in the U.S. Malnutrition leads to more complications, falls, and 30-day readmissions. I'm going to show you a little bit more about that as we move forward. And protein-calorie malnutrition-related hospital stays are 2 times longer. People have to stay twice as long. And protein-calorie malnutrition-related hospital stays are 3 times more likely to result in death. So serious business. And look at this. It also illustrates what we observe every day, and that is that those over 85 are most at risk for nutritional problems. And what's specific about this data is that this is compared to other older adults. So, and we see that folks over 65 are in general at higher risk for malnutrition, but it's that over 85 age group where we really see this as a significant problem. And lastly, let me show you what they say about the steps to take to improve older adult malnutrition. And much of this is what we do every day in our nutrition work. And I'm showing it to you because I'm so excited about how it's becoming part of the advocacy conversation. This is what's being talked about when it comes to public health policy for the older adults, and it's really about time. So it's under this umbrella that we will talk about healthy holidays. And with everything we do, our residents are at the center of our decision making. And this year has been a particularly difficult one with older adults at the epicenter of this pandemic. So when it comes to the holidays, we want to do our very best to pull out all the stops, work within whatever constraints we may have, and make the holidays wonderful for those we serve. Our residents, now more than ever, are depending on us. And my proposal to you is that, yes, we do all those wonderful traditional food-related holiday things that we do so well. But this year, I challenge you to look for ways to boost the nutritional impact of the holidays as well. And I'm going to tell you why I have this proposal for you. So because the world has changed so drastically for our residents, let's look at the psychosocial impact Now, this is a slide that I use a lot when I talk about nutrition in the older adults. And sometimes I even animate it and have you see the factors come into this funnel. But let's start at our far right corner here, and you can see that when people come to us, we know that they are going to have certain psychosocial issues. You know, we're set up for that. We know about loss of autonomy. People are going from many times an independent living situation, either in independent living or in their own home. Many people have had very active and purposeful lives, and they come to us, and really we anticipate that, and we look for opportunities to give them more sense of purpose and enjoyment in life. We have folks who come to us with dementia, and that's a particular challenge in and of itself. And again, getting into this funnel of loss of motivation to eat. But again, we anticipate these factors when it comes to our programs community-wide, not just in dining. Therapeutic diets are a factor that since the new dining practice standards came out in 2014, I think we've really had some language to wrap around this, where now we know that unless a therapeutic diet, the benefit of that therapeutic diet far outweighs the risk of an older adult not eating well, it's really not appropriate. And so in general, what that means is that we're serving a general diet to most of our older adults, despite the fact that they may have diabetes or high blood pressure or et cetera. With the exception of maybe our textured modified foods, we really focus on the general diet for the older adults because therapeutic diets can add to a decrease in motivation to eat. But now if you look at the bubbles that are inside the funnel, the real problems that we're presented with now are related to the pandemic. And who would have thought that isolation, grief, anxiousness really was going to be a primary focus of our planning for nutrition programs, for our menu, for our activities. And this is really a significant factor for us. And this is really what's really coloring our approach to the holidays, because everything we do now nutritionally and programmatically has to take into account these psychosocial issues. And so we'll talk about that. And I also want to talk about the why. Why do we even care about this loss of motivation to eat in people who don't eat well? And so I want to show you this cycle of nutrition problems that I think really helps illustrate our priorities and why our priorities are what they are. So if you look at the upper right-hand section of the circle, you see we start with poor eating. So when someone does not eat well, it's a concern because what does that lead to? That leads to weight loss and nutritional deficiencies. And why is that so much of a concern for us? Well, because anyone who has had weight loss, they, by the way, will have nutritional deficiencies, especially when it's unintentional weight loss. They're at increased risk for illness and infection. And when someone's at an increased risk for illness and infection, particularly in this environment, right, they're more likely to become frail. They're more likely to go to the hospital. And if they do go to the hospital, they're more likely to have an increased length of stay. So they'll stay at the hospital longer. And isn't that interesting? That's what those earlier slides I was showing you from the Defeat Malnutrition Today infographic was showing that, you know, the statistics support that. And if someone does end up becoming frail, they're more likely, as we circle around, continue through this cycle, they're more likely to have decreased functioning, particularly independent, activities of daily living type functioning. They're more likely to fall, and they're more likely to die from whatever condition they have. If they do survive, guess what? They're a poor eater still, and the cycle continues. So this slide completely illustrates the whole purpose of nutrition intervention for the older adult. It's to interact anywhere throughout this cycle. Anytime that we can intervene, obviously we want to intervene before. We anticipate that older adults, particularly over the age of 85, as I showed you on that slide, are going to be poor eaters. So anywhere that we can intervene is where we can help stop the cycle. And I do want to very quickly say one thing about obesity, because sometimes we make the assumption that if someone has extra body fat stores, that they have extra nutrition stores and that they are eating well enough. And it is very common in our population that we serve that folks are either overweight or obese. And part of it is that there are high-calorie foods to help them maintain their weight, but perhaps they're eating foods that are also low in nutrients, particularly protein. And if you don't know this term yet, I want to introduce it to you, and that is sarcopenia. That's a factor that we have to worry about with all older folks, including those who are overweight. And sarcopenia is a decreased muscle mass and a decline in functioning, meaning decline in strength. And that's related to, just age-related decrease in nutritional status. So here, this lady here, she looks robust, but in fact, she has weakened muscles, we can assume, with the fact that she's using a walker. So important thing to keep in mind. So now that I have painted that picture for you, I'm going to ask you another polling question, and that is, have you seen an increase in unintentional weight loss in your community? And you can answer yes, no, and I don't know. And of course, this is related to the COVID-19 pandemic. Wow. Okay, people are still filling out. I'm really curious to see how this is coming up. So I'm going to give it another second or two. Okay, you're still coming in. Yes, no, or maybe so? Okay, I'm gonna close the poll. I'm really surprised. Now, I expected, and I'm going to tell you why I'm surprised. 52.5% of you said yes, since the pandemic, you've seen an increase in weight loss in your community. We're set up to monitor weight. We're set up with interventions. Now, many of you, you know what I should have asked, too, is I should have asked how many of you are not having your dietitian in your community because of lockdown. So this is a very serious issue that we have, in that even though, we are anticipating our folks are going to lose weight, with this pandemic, it really is taking its toll on our residents' weight. And as you can see from that cycle that I talked about, does it not present a good amount of risk for us? So thanks for filling that out. That's really interesting. So what's our focus? Holiday foods for unintentional weight loss. We really want to focus on calories, protein, carbohydrates, fat. That's your source of calories, but also nutrient density. So what can we do to contribute to vitamins, minerals, phytonutrients? Those are all those kind of esoteric nutrients, the beta carotenes and the fibers and things like that really help create the foundation of health through food. And so I think that we've got a pretty good case here for why, as we're doing our holiday planning, we really need to make an effort to make sure that the nutrient density is there for our folks. And I guess since I've seen the poll, I'm going to say that, of course, protein's so important, but the calorie is going to be king here as well. But when we get to some of the other slides, I'm going to also be able to support my argument on why we really need to go nutrients and not just empty calories. All right, let's look at this. Here's an idea, and I want to give you an idea of what I'm talking about. For thinking of, again, we want to have social opportunity for our residents to get nutrient density. And so I'm proposing Milkshake Night. Now, the reason why I like this is, first and foremost, most milkshakes are built around milk, some type of a milk. Cow's milk is awesome for our older folks, if they can tolerate, because it's a wonderful source of protein and calories, particularly whole milk has, and that's typically what you use with a milkshake. Now, if you have folks who do not tolerate milk, of course, the lactose-free milks are helpful, but soy milk would be your choice on any other any other plant-based milk. And maybe you know why. The main reason is because it's the highest protein source, and we really care about protein. We want to prevent sarcopenia with our older folks, so soy is the way to go. And because of the nutrient density of this, your portions can be small. So you can serve a 4-ounce or a 6-ounce milkshake and really get some real calories in. The other thing I like about this is that for those of your residents who may be on some type of supplementation, an Ensure, a Boost, even a 2-cal. 2-cals are great for milkshakes. It normalizes the supplementation, so you can just make their batch with their supplement as the base instead of the cow's milk. I also love the milkshake idea because we're going to get our fluids in as well. So you're kind of covering 2 birds with 1 stone. I could have and probably should have asked you about dehydration too, because my guess is that 80% or more of you are very or extremely concerned about the hydration status of your residents as well. Now, smoothies can be used as well. So you can do yogurt-based, fruit-based, berry-based type smoothies as well. I would say stay away from the celery juice type spinach juicy smoothies because we're not going to get the calorie density from it. But there's a lot you can do. There's so many wonderful recipes out there that they don't have to look like the ones in this picture. You can have some, fruit and vegetables in them. And I do want to give you one caveat, and that is we serve a highly susceptible population. So if you look at your federal food code, there's certain foods that we can't serve, right? Undercooked eggs, raw fish, green onions, sprouts, and unpasteurized juices. So if you are going to make juices for your smoothies or for whatever reason, you want to make sure you are making them and serving them. We cannot hold juices without them being pasteurized. Okay, got another idea for you. Hydration. Hydration stations right now have to come to the residents, right? Our residents, in most cases, especially now, are not going to the hydration station. So I want to just point out, and many of you may know this, but I just want to point out for you what we're seeing as fluids, what we can think about as fluids. Soups. And soups are so popular among those we serve, so really push the soups, particularly the brothy soups. Juices are obvious, but fruit. Don't forget juicy fruit. Good old-fashioned canned fruit's a great way to get some hydration in. Yogurt and drinkable yogurts are also great choices. Keepers, things like that are also great choices, and I think many of our residents enjoy that flavor. Smoothies and shakes we talked about. Coffee and tea beverage, there's so many opportunities to get flavors and calories. Think about Starbucks. Starbucks is not all about the, 8-ounce cup of black coffee. Starbucks has a lot of calories in it, and if we can borrow from some of their coffee and tea concepts, we can really go a long way to getting extra calories. As a matter of fact, I have a newsletter I put out every month, and just last month I had a link to an article about some of these new international approaches to coffee and tea bars that restaurants are picking up. And I said, we could adopt some of these concepts for our hydration stations. So, think along those lines. Ice cream, of course, is a fluid, and it doesn't have to be ice cream. It can be sorbets and ices and things like that. And good old-fashioned cereal and milk. I'm going to talk about cereal and milk a few times here. In my entire practice, I've always talked about this being a great opportunity for snacks. I put cereal and milk on my menu as a snack all the time, and of course, with the milk, they get their hydration. Now, Sonia has a wonderful video for you that she put together. This is a fantastic recipe that includes both calories, protein, and it has wonderful, great holiday concepts. So I think you're going to love this. And by the way, you will get these recipes, but let's.
In this recipe, we're going to feature a great holiday beverage. We're going to make it protein rich. We're going to include both tofu and yogurt. So we're going to blenderize an eggnog for you. So we're actually taking extra firm tofu. We're using Yoplait, the Parfait Pro low-fat yogurt, but you can also use Greek yogurt or the YQ extra high protein yogurt. We're going to add both salt and nutmeg. We're going to add vanilla. We're going to add rum extract, but feel free if you want to go ahead and use a little adult beverage. You can add the rum of your choice. To get that velvety flavor that you normally get from egg yolks in your eggnog, we're adding some brown sugar. And then we're actually just going to add 8 ounces of water since we're using extra firm tofu to go ahead and dissolve that up. Now this is going to be loud, but we're going to blenderize it. And then we're going to add 6 ounces of ice at the end so it gets an extra smooth, rich flavor to it, and that way it has really good texture. So here we go. Just that quick. Now we're going to add the ice. We're going to blenderize it again. And just that fast. We've got a wonderful beverage. If you want, you can actually portion these up and have them ready available to pass. We've also done a couple extra versions if you want to do them with fancy glassware. In addition, you can decorate the rim. We just took the glass, dipped it in a little bit of water, dipped it in some cinnamon sugar, but you could also use a colored sugar if you like. That gives us the fancy rim. Then go ahead, pour our beverage. And optional, garnish it with a little more nutmeg if you like. Enjoy.
Isn't it great? So talk about calorie density and holiday all in one. Right now I want to talk a little bit about gut health and immunity. There's been a lot of talk about the role of immunity and COVID-19. So it's very interesting that people are focusing on specific nutrients like zinc, vitamin D, vitamin C, and these are all nutrients that we know about that support immunity. Now, whether or not they have a specific role with COVID-19, the research still is out on that. But we do know that there are specific nutrients that support immunity. But I think the bigger point when it comes to immunity and COVID and immunity in general is that there are some truths that we already know about immunity and health, and that is particularly in the gut health arena. And ultra-processed foods negatively impact immunity. We know that. So a reduced overall intake of the foods that our residents are eating, we've already talked about that. Our residents may be poor eaters. If they have a reduced overall intake of food, that means that what they do eat, we need to make sure that every bite counts, because these ultra-processed foods, or empty calories in other words, really can negatively impact their immunity. And I have another way to show this to you, and that is that the gut is the major site of immune activity. You know, we're hearing more and more and more about gut health and why we care about gut health, and it really has to do with immunity and inflammation. And they, you know, and research is showing us that inflammation really is the core part of disease, you know, the cornerstone of much disease. And so we focus in on the gut health. So on the first left-hand side of the slide, you can see that the Western diet disturbs a healthy intestinal flora. It contributes to chronic inflammation in the gut, and that contributes to suppressed immunity. It's all related. And this is where the future of nutrition is going in many ways when we talk about gut health. And specifically what we're talking about here is that our diet will determine the microbes that we have in our gut, and the microbes in our gut is what determines our overall general health through immunity and inflammation. So what are we talking about when we mean our diet? Well, high fiber, plant-rich foods, including fruits, vegetables, whole grains, legumes in the gut will then contribute to a stimulation of the immune system, of the cells in the gut that contribute to immune health. And how do we boil that down then in terms of diet? And that is, and Sonia showed us will show us next in her next demonstration, the probiotic and prebiotic foods. Probiotic foods, we're all familiar with that. Those are the live cultures that we see in yogurt, in sauerkraut, in other fermented foods, kimchi, things like that. I think every culture has one, right? And then the prebiotics come in the form of many of our plant-based foods that we talked about, and certainly high fiber foods. So let's give you a real-life example demonstration with Sonia's illustration here, and that is the overnight oats.
Hi, in this next recipe, we're going to talk about gut health. We're going to talk about prebiotics and probiotics. So the first one, our prebiotic, is going to be oatmeal. And our probiotic is going to be yogurt. So this recipe makes a wonderful overnight oats, but you can actually eat it any time of day. I just like it because this way you can do it at the end of the shift and then have it ready for the morning. And our next ingredient is actually apple juice, a little brown sugar, and a little bit of cinnamon. And we're going to use this primarily just to hydrate the oats. We're just going to give it a stir. And it looks pretty loose right now, but that's okay because overnight it's going to thicken up just like porridge. So at this point, we're going to wrap it, throw it in the fridge, and come back the next morning. And while we're getting ready, the second half of the recipe is actually going to be fresh grated apple. We're going to have diced apricots, and we actually threw in a little bit of dried cranberries as well. So we did these last night when we mixed the oats, and then in the morning we're just going to stir those two together. So let's go ahead and do that part. So this is what our oats look like the next morning. Look at how beautifully thick that is. And then you can see our fruit is nicely hydrated. It just smells wonderful. All right. Now we're just going to fold these two together. Look at that. You see all that fruit, all those colors, all those flavors. And there you have it. We have overnight oats. Enjoy.
Versatile. And I'm going to bring another poll open to you here. I think you can see it. Yes, you can. Finding special holiday foods that meet the needs of residents with chewing and swallowing problems is a challenge. Always, sometimes, and never. And I ask this question because I don't know if you know, I happen to be a little bit of an IDDSI geek, and I've been really studying a lot about texture modified foods and thickened liquids. And, you know, that could be up to 25% of the folks that we serve are on some form of textured modified foods. So it's really important that we have solutions for them as well. Here's our poll: always, sometimes, okay, good, or never. And so I want to talk about that a little bit in terms of the holidays and those with chewing and swallowing problems. And I want to introduce a new concept for you, and that is oral frailty. This is a term that is swirling around a little bit now in the geriatric circles, and they're saying that oral frailty should really be screened for now. We need to start anticipating that older folks might be experiencing oral frailty. Its major causes are poor dental status, meaning people who can't chew well, have poor teeth dental status, and sarcopenia, weakening of those muscles again, but this time it happens to be the muscles around the mouth and the jaw. And the interesting thing about oral frailty is that a person can have a weakness in the jaw area or poor teeth, and they tend to have oral frailty, which, as you can imagine, leads to poor eating. But the flip side of it is that people who have dysphagia in general, who aren't using their muscles and aren't well coordinated as well, they can have sarcopenic oral frailty, but also those who have an overall condition of being frail could then contributes to dysphagia. So, you know, we see people who come to us with dysphagia for a variety of reasons, but also those of us who see those people on that cycle, that cascade of nutrition problems with poor eating and undernutrition, they end up eventually getting dysphagia because of a weakened oral status, oral frailty. So I wanted to bring that up because I think it's really important. And then I also very quickly want to, just so we're all on the same page, talk about dysphagia, where dysphagia is where food can get into the airway, meaning you breathe in food gets in the lungs, and that can cause infection and pneumonia, which can be deadly. But also then food can get stuck in the air passage and choking. So it's serious business, and that's why we want to make sure that we have an approach for those folks with dysphagia. And the way we handle dysphagia, of course, is by thickening liquids to make them go down the throat slower. We can puree foods, mince foods, mash foods, grind foods, etc. And that's how we get it to the form that it needs to be. And when it comes to these recipes that we're talking about today and the holiday foods in general, we want to make sure that we're keeping an eye on the IDDSI standards. And for those of you who haven't started with IDDSI, I'm encouraging you to start with pureed, because we're all serving pureed foods anyway. And with pureed, it's as simple as teaching your team how to use a fork drip test and a spoon tilt test to see if your foods that you're serving will meet their needs. So, for example, that wonderful eggnog that Sonia showed us, can we thicken that up a little bit more and get it to sit up on a fork like this, and then put it on a spoon here and tilt it, and if it slides off the spoon, it's not too sticky, and that's going to work for our pureed folks. So it really opens up the world to us for recipe standards to be able to say, you know, if it passes these two tests and an appearance test, we want to make sure it doesn't have any separate weeping thin liquid. But if we can get past these tests, a food will work. Another example we can talk about perhaps is the overnight oats that Sonia showed us for, again, for a pureed. If we pureed up what Sonia did there with the oats, and then maybe even made a puree, and Sonia gave me this idea, make a puree, or thicken up some kind of a fruit puree, even canned peaches that you're going to take and puree up, and layer them in a cup with those overnight oats. That really makes a nice dish. And then, of course, add those seasonings, you know, the holiday spices, and now we've got a solution. Does it work for you? How do you know that that recipe works? Well, you get out a fork and a spoon, and then you know. So that's the exciting thing about that. So, so what are our strategies for dysphagia and oral frailty around the holidays? Make it easy and safe for your folks to eat. That's the first step in particular, and that's true of all, everything we serve those with dysphagia. Build in that nutrient density, especially, we know those are our highest risk people who are on textured modified foods. Don't forget about the hydration. So find out what their orders are for thickened liquids and work within those categories. Some of the ideas that we talked about today, for example, the ice creams. Now, the ice creams will melt in your mouth, right? The milkshake idea, that will melt in your mouth, so you will definitely have to thicken that so you don't have a mixed consistency in the mouth. But milkshakes are a great way for our folks with dysphagia to get their calories and their hydration in at the same time. Keep the holiday spirit, even just using the holiday spices or flavors, orange and cranberry. There's lots of ways to get those flavors in a textured modified way. And then train your team. Don't forget about those testing methods, the fork drip test, spoon tilt test, and then a visual view of what you're looking at to make sure there's no thin liquid. So very quickly, I wanted to make sure that we covered those people with dysphagia. All right, let's talk about between meal snacking, because between meal snacking really is where we're going to get the extra nutrition in during the day. Our menus are planned. We do a good job at that. We get our calories in. We may throw in extra holiday ideas, and Sonia has a few holiday ideas for you just for the regular menu. For example, she has a lovely gluten-free cranberry glazed turkey meatloaf. That's wonderful. That you'll get some information on that as well. But the between meal is where we really have the opportunity to hit the note on our two top priorities, which is socialization and nutrition density. And part of where you can go to your team to say, we really want to focus on nutrition from our perspective, is to know your level of nutrition risk. One of the things you can share with your teams is, out of the hundreds of people who answered that polling question earlier today, 80% of people serving older adults today in our setting are either extremely or very concerned about the nutritional status of their residents. Over 75% of you guys have said you've had additional unintentional weight loss. So we know our level of risk. There's also screening tools you can use, especially for those of you who may not have access to your dietitians in-house. There's lots of screening tools specifically designed for older adults where you can identify those who are at nutritional risk. So use between meals as your clinical intervention for all these nutritional problems that we've identified. And plan with your interdisciplinary team and take full advantage of the opportunity. So some of our old standbys, like popcorn in a bowl, that whole bowl's probably got 100 calories in it. We need to rethink that and say any opportunity we have to interact with our residents is an opportunity to lift their spirits, and it's an opportunity to give them nutrient density. So I got a few ideas for you. One is the PJ party, breakfast for dinner. One of the most popular menu items I know that I get feedback on when I write menus is our people we serve love breakfast for dinner. And it's a great opportunity to get some high quality protein in. So the pancakes, the French toast, there's some really nice frozen ones on the market right now, so they're easy to get out. But can we link that with some type of a protein? The pre-made hard-boiled eggs, the pre-cooked breakfast sausages, all very good quality these days. It can really make for an exciting snack and make it mini. Also, eggs or omelets in the mini cupcakes. And don't forget your fruit as an opportunity for fluid. Here's another idea. Expanding on the PJ party idea, where your team comes all dressed up in their pajamas, and maybe even your residents might be interested in, putting something like that on. But that you use cereal at night instead of popcorn as a snacky idea. You involve your activity teams, and then don't forget your milk. And, I've already talked about cereal a few times already, but I want to point out that the thing that I really like about cereal, too, besides all the fiber and et cetera, is that even if it's a sugar bomb, which when you're having it between meals, it makes for a nice treat. You know, they spray the vitamins and minerals on cereal. So you're really getting, in some cereals, you can really get quite a dose of vitamins and minerals on a serving size. And of course, it comes in a lot of convenience ways and prepackaged in PCs that really work for us now as we go door to door, literally, with our solutions. So again, I point that out, but Sonia's got another idea for you when it comes to the between meal snack, and she is going to talk in here about a snack check mix type snack that was pre-made. There is a recipe for that you will get some information on. So when she shows you that, she does have a recipe for that already developed. All right, so here's Sonia.
This recipe I really like. It's kind of fun. It's kind of like making bridge mix, but we're making our own snack mix. So we're going to take our actual Chex Mix. We're going to fortify it with some extra nuts and seeds for additional protein. Who doesn't love adding just a little sweet touch? So we have some sweetened coconut, some baking chips, and some dried fruit. We're adding even a little bit more seeds to bulk up our protein. And then we're just going to bind it with just a hint of the sweetened condensed milk. So all of these we're going to put in our bowl. We're actually going to spray the bowl first. We're going to spray our spatula, and then we're also going to spray on top of our parchment pan. The reason being, it's going to help get the sugar to release from the pan once the product fully cools, so that way you can break it into nice, neat little clusters to enjoy your snack mix. And then I have a surprise for you at the end. We're going to have one more way that you can serve this treat as well. So let's go ahead and assemble our ingredients. First, don't forget, spray the pan, spray the bowl, spray the spatula, and heavily spray your parchment. Now we're just going to open each of our ingredients, dump them in the bowl. This is the great, no mess, no fuss. This is great too to use those bulk cereals. You can, right today we're using Rice Chex, but you can use any particular cereal that you have on hand. We chose Rice Chex, Corn Chex, we even have a Honey Nut Cheerios. And you don't have to use plastic bags. You can use however you want to portion these. If you want to scale each one in the bowl, that's okay too. I actually did a butterscotch chip too, because I was kind of having that magic bar vibe. I know the recipe says chocolate chips, but you know what? Mix it up. Whatever you have in your inventory is awesome. Okay, we're going to give this just a quick stir dry before we drizzle in the sweetened condensed milk. Give it just a light blend. And then now we're going to go ahead and put the sweetened condensed milk in. I'm only doing a half batch. That's why I pre-measured this is a half can. But if you're doing the full batch, it's 1 can. So that makes it really easy. Just sort of drizzle it all over the whole thing. Scrape it out. All right. Give it a little stir in love. Just that simple. We've got our snack mix ready to go in the pan. Now we're going to put it on our pre-sprayed parchment pan with paper. Make sure you get all that out of the bowl. It smells just like magic bars. And then just kind of push it out to the edge. This doesn't have to be flat. You just want to kind of get it even across the sheet pan. So this way it can crisp. It can evenly brown a little bit. It's okay if this caramelizes. I want it to have a caramel color when it comes out of the oven. And just that easy, you can see, nice across the pan. We're going to go ahead and put it in the oven. It's not going to take long at all, like 8 to 10 minutes tops. You could give it a stir in the middle, but since we have the chocolate chips or the butterscotch chips in there, you don't really have to because you don't want to like smear the chips. So let's throw it in the oven and then we'll pull a batch out. See you in just a minute. And just like that, we've got our nice caramelized looking snack mix. I'm going to get some gloves. Sometimes you actually can get these. You want to let this cool for at least 15 to 20 minutes because remember, you're going to have all that hot sugar in there and you want to have a chance to let it set up so that it gets nice, crisp little clusters. So we're going to let this cool. And then in case you have clusters that are a little bigger than you want for your container, you have a couple different options. That's why we sprayed the parchment so that they'll easily release. It's easiest if you actually turn those little clusters upside down and then just gently work with your fingers. That way you're not breaking them apart. You're kind of just letting them naturally snap apart. And then that way we don't crush the cereal in our snack bars too. All right, so now we're ready. We can go ahead and portion up our snack mix. So whether you want to put these in souffle cups, if you want to put them in beverage glasses, or you can actually even put them in little sandwich baggies, do a little twist tie, and then you could put with love from culinary or from dining services and just give one to everyone. You do want to make sure, since these do have nuts and seeds in them, that they're appropriate for each person's diet. And then that way you can always adjust if need be. So enjoy. We want to show you one other way that you can feature this recipe.
Okay, thanks, Sonia. That was wonderful. And the other way that she was going to show you, and we're short on time, so we're not going to show it, but the other way she was going to show you is really to deconstruct those ingredients. And rather than bake them, you can put them on a tray and bring them to the residents and let them, as Sonia says, serve it to them butler service. So you bring them a plastic cup with a lid, and you serve each one of those individual ingredients into the cup, and they tell you what they want. They select from a variety of items that they can pick from. So that's a fun way to do it as well. And we've had a few questions about, we'll hope we get the recipes included, and yes, they are available on the website, and you will get a communique, an email directly from us that will say how to get access to the recipes. So let me wrap this up for you by talking about the best practices when it comes to nutrition and the holidays in this era of COVID-19. So things are going to be different for a while. I guess, I was kind of in my mind hoping we were going to be able to not have the holidays be so rough, but I think we're in this for a little bit longer, so we're going to have to think about things differently. And when we do that, we really need to make good nutrition a priority. And based on our nutrition risk, and I can tell you, you've got nutrition risk. We all do. So we really need to make nutrition a good priority. And we need to define the social component of our nutrition strategy for our community. And that's new for us. I know we work very well with activities and other departments, but to really brainstorm and put our heads together on how we're going to meet that collective need of both socialization and nutrition at the same time, and really see it as an opportunity, because it's an opportunity to really address these problems. And I want to make one final point about that. We do have a lot of cookies and other types of things that maybe might be more empty calories around the holidays, and that's really important that we continue with those traditions, of course. But it's also important that we look for ways to make the nutrient density there so that we have, I guess, breaks in, the holiday itself is going to be from now until the first of the year. So we're going to have, there's lots of things in between there where we can take some of these more nutritious approaches to the holidays. All right, so what would be your call to action on this? Know that for a fact you have nutrition risk. Get a dietitian involved, because that's how you're going to be able to define your nutrient density in terms of what's our calorie that we're trying to hit, what are our protein requirements that we're trying to meet, and what other nutrients do we want to make sure that we're getting in for a variety of foods. Remember, that gut health component of it is the prebiotic, probiotic. Plan nutrition interventions as a whole and then individualize from there. The milkshake example is a good idea. You can have your milkshake night, and then you can individualize it for certain people who have certain needs, and look for opportunities where you can meet more than one person's needs with the same thing. Have a special approach for special cases, like your textured modifications, and we talked about that. And then, of course, bottom line is socialize everything. Socialize your interventions so that we can also lift the spirits as we lift our nutrition status of our residents. So now that's it for my comments. I'm going to say goodbye to you here. I'll be available to answer some of the questions. Thanks for being here. Let's stay connected. It's really hard to do these things sometimes virtually where we can't see each other. I've been enjoying connecting with folks on LinkedIn. That's the way to get a hold of me. But also come and visit my website at roachdietitians.com. You can sign up for that newsletter I was talking about. If you have any questions or want to follow up with me, I'll be here as we wrap this up today, but also feel free to connect with me directly.
All right, thanks, Maggie. And this is Megan, your moderator back here. So as a reminder, we have a host of recipes available on our website, so generalmillscf.com. Here's a sampling of them. So all of the recipes that you saw today and more, you can find on our website. And with that, we would like to jump into a quick Q&A. So we've already received some questions, so thank you for that. And if you have additional questions, please feel free to submit them in the lower left-hand corner of your screen. The first question here, what are some pureed foods that we can use for breakfast day parts?
Sorry, I was muted. Oh, that's a good question. Breakfast in particular can be a challenge. I really liked Sonia. I think I talked about Sonia's idea with the overnight oats, and also look for, again, the protein in there. So I would start with even layering some pureed meats with some seasonal flavors like cranberries. You know, how many people put sausage in? Think of the deconstructed stuffing or dressing where you've got breakfast sausage, sage, cranberry, bread. You can layer that in a pureed way, and that can really make a nice seasonal impact as well, and very nutritious. Start with meat, though.
Great, thank you. One more question here, I think for Chef Sonia. We're doing more individually packaged items and grab-and-go stations. What suggestions do you have to make our offerings more festive for the holidays?
I think kind of a low-hanging fruit that we do is don't underestimate the value of themes. You know, that you can go ahead and still decorate your dining room or your service area. It still provides, you know, the social excitement for the eating event. So even if you're using, you know, individually wrapped items or prepackaged items, that way your residents are still getting in the mood, feeling the theme, and connecting socially, because that encourages us to eat just as well.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Chef. And thank you, everyone, for your great questions and your time. And I know now it's time to wrap up as we're getting close to the end here. To thank you guys for joining today's webinar and to help put some of these strategies and recipes into action on your menu, we'd like to offer you a free case of a General Mills product. And so here you can see a sampling of what we have to offer. You will receive an email this week with information on how you can get that free case, so keep your eyes out for that. And that email will also include links to the slides presented today, a recording of today's webinar, and the continuing education certificate. So look for that in your email. And if you haven't already, make sure to go to generalmillscf.com to sign up to receive our hospital or retirement living newsletters, depending on your area of expertise. And once signed up, be sure to watch your inbox for future webinars and free continuing education opportunities from us as we have more content planned. And we also invite you to follow General Mills Convenience and Food Service and the Bell Institute on social media. You can explore our websites, which offer nutrition education resources, videos, recipe inspirations, and previously recording continuing education webinars. So all of our past webinars are available as well. And lastly, as mentioned earlier, you will be asked to fill out a short survey at the conclusion of this program. Please rate today's webinar and share your feedback, as that helps to make sure that our content continues to serve your needs. And this concludes today's program. So thank you so much for joining, and you may now disconnect. Thank you.